Welcome everyone to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast. I'm a networking expert and the author of the upcoming book, No Strangers, How to Build Community, One Relationship at a Time. My why is the pursuit of mastery, and the goal of this podcast is to lock arms on a lifelong mission of daily personal growth to become the best version of ourselves. So let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the podcast. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We are joined by a very special guest. He's achieved a level of mastery as the drummer for a bunch of amazing artists, a bunch of amazing acts and bands, including Serena Ryder, Edwin, Cardinal Official, Thornley, Bedouin Soundclash, Ben Kenny of Incubus, and last but not least, in 2021, he became the drummer for the multi-platinum band Big Wreck. So welcome to the podcast, Sekou Lumumba. Sekou, how are you? And how good does it feel to be out on the road, back on tour, playing to big, enthusiastic crowds after a lengthy lockdown?
Hey, man, you said it all. That's absolutely it. It feels incredible. And it's, you worked in the industry, so I don't have to tell you what this must have been like. This whole pandemic has kind of decimated, our industry for a while. And so it feels amazing to be back, man. It feels good to be back playing in front of people. It was a little touch and go for me for a while there. There was a point where I wasn't sure if I was going to come out of this still being a drummer. My wife and I are looking to start a family. Not yet, but looking to, and it's pretty tough if you're trying to survive on on drummer wages when there's no music, being created. So it's good it's back, and what we're noticing is and I don't know how long it lasts for, but what we're noticing is that at the shows, like, people are starved for shows again, and good shows again, so all the shows have been really well attended. People have been pretty rabid and pretty enthusiastic. The feedback after shows online has been just amazing. So yeah, it feels great to be back,
Yeah,
sure.
The interviews that I did with musicians on this podcast at the start of the pandemic, some of them were pretty dark, where musicians didn't know if their skills were ever going to be needed again. We didn't know if there'd ever be live shows again. So musicians with all this talent in one area, suddenly that's irrelevant, and it means nothing. So, man, there was like a darkness for a while there.
For sure, dude. Exactly. That's the truth. Like, we don't generally have very transferable skills. People, I do this for a living. I have for the last 26 years, maybe, so it's what I know. I just wake up. I still am to a degree a session drummer. So, you put something in front of me and I figure out what the idiom is and I learn how to play it. And that's how I make my money. So how do you transfer those skills, to something that's not music and specifically in my case, drumming related. So yeah, it's good to be back. Like, I was looking into being a mailman, dude. Like, I had done training for it and everything. I'd gone out and walked with a mail delivery guy, like on an actual mail walk, and that was going to be what I was going to do. And then, as fate would have it, Ian called, and 2 years later, here we are. So yeah, it was wild.
Yeah, the biggest conversion of industries that I saw was musicians becoming real estate agents. Like, I could name a ridiculous amount, because you have the bottom, like the pit that was the music industry, and you had the all-time highs that was real estate, right? So yeah. I can, and it's like super talented musicians that have transitioned over, and they're having a lot of success. And it's what's crazy is it seems like there's some skills you develop as a musician that translate well, where it's like not being afraid of rejection. It's a numbers game and asking for what you want, and taking care of the fan base, which is like your clients. And so I can see the transition there.
That's really interesting. Wow. Huh.
Yeah, it's crazy. So let's share with the listeners how we ended up here today with this interview. So at the end of every interview, afterwards, I talk to the guests and I just say, hey, is there anyone you can think of that would make for a great guest for a future episode? And I asked that of Rich Bedouin of, Finger 11 fame and Saint Asonia fame. And he came up with two names. He came up with Dave Buckner, who is the drummer for Papa Roach, who's coming up in a few months on they're promoting a new book about their first album, Infest. And then he mentioned Sekou, and here we are. So we got to give a shout out to Rich for the powerful hookup here. So
love that guy, man. He is something else. Yeah, we toured a bunch back in the days. I'm sure I told you with Thornley, we opened for them and 3 Days Grace on a bunch of dates, and they were wild. I mean, they were. It was really fun to watch him play. Every night he has such an energy when he plays that you just did not see from anybody. Like he used to. Part of his playing, part of his fills was him swearing in his drum kit. He'd be playing and like spitting at it, like telling to go fuck itself, like, as he was hitting it, and just really in a place. So he was mesmerizing to watch on stage, and he plays like a god too. He's a really amazing player, and we just didn't touch over the years. So it's he's has his ups and downs, and he looks like he's healthy and he's in a much better place now. So I'm really happy that he did the I don't know if you mentioned, I'm sure you did mention, but he did some Daughtry dates, and it was his first time back playing with them. Well, playing musically for, I think he told me about 5 or 6 years. So, it was a little intimidating. So, but he really stepped up, man. Just really put himself in a place where he just had, about 6 weeks, I think, to learn all that stuff. And I think his first show or two were a little rocky because, it's been 6 years and you're not playing this really high energy, heavily powered rock stuff. But he killed it, man, and eventually like got to a place where you saw that Rich again. You saw the guy that people, pay tickets to come see. I think that's the reason Chris Daughtry reached out to him, because he was always a big fan of Rich's, and his playing. So I'm a huge fan. I can't say enough good things about him. An incredible human being, like just the nicest dude. So hopefully we'll get to see each other more on the road these days as he's back at it again.
So those dates, that was him playing with Daughtry, and it was Big Rec was on the bill as well.
Yes, exactly. We were opening. It was a short run. I think it was like 2 weeks, and Chris takes a fair bit of time off between shows. So I think it ended up being 9 shows in total. And Rich came in for, was it 2 or 3? I think Daughtry's drummer had to step out for another engagement for a bit, so Rich came in. And then something happened with the drummer as well for Europe. So he came back in and did the European dates, which we weren't there for. But he did those dates, and from what I understand, they went really, really well. So,
man, those European festivals, some nights were 90,000 people. Like the videos I saw that Daughtry posted and that he posted were like all-time big crowds. It was insane.
Oh, wow. That's amazing, man. Yeah, good for him. And it's just great because he, I think he'd given up, I don't want to speak too much for him, but I think he kind of more or less given up doing shows of that size or playing with bands like that level. So getting to play with him, I know, was a real thrill for him. And I'm glad that he's back out there. We all, like, where it stands, like we've talked about Rich in our band a bunch over the recent weeks and months and stuff, just kind of rooting for him. Like we all want him to like secretly steal the gig, and, and get back out there, because people need to know more about Rich Bedouin for sure.
Absolutely. So you've said some kind words about him. So I have some kind words from Rich for you. So he sent me what might be the one quote to rule them all. This is a long one, so hang tight. And I'm going to read through this. So this is what Rich has to say about Sekou. He says, Sekou is a drummer's drummer. The care and thought he puts into every aspect of his instrument and playing makes drummers like me in constant awe of him. Here's 3 things about Sekou. First, his playing. I've watched Sekou over the many years we've known each other become chameleon-like with each gig he has. You can throw a dart at a dartboard of different genres of music, and Sekou will attack it with complete comfort and grace, as if it's the only style of playing he's ever mastered. But then he swipes left and becomes a complete yin and yang of that style, and you will swear that that's his style that he's a master of. He will do this over and over again with different gigs and kinds of music, and it blows my mind with adoration. He will play with the same ferocity at a hot, sweaty club in downtown Toronto, same as a corporate gig, at a wedding, to recording studio tracking drums, to playing in front of 20,000 people at sold out arenas. It doesn't matter. You will get the same Sekou each time. Number two, his setups. I have for years and years looked at what Sekou is doing with his drum setups. He always has the coolest kits and everything is always in the perfect place. I have copied his setup so many times trying to achieve what he achieves, and I always fail. He takes such good care of his instruments, and it's sexy, goddammit. If you don't believe me, take a look at his new DW kit he recently started using. The most beautiful drums I have ever seen in my life. That's all in caps, I have to tell you. Number three, the human being. Sekou is one of the kindest men I have ever met in my life. He has a heart of gold and will take time to make young drummers the center of his universe when he speaks to them. He listens to you and he cares what you're saying, and you feel like you're in a very loving place when speaking with him. Everyone loves Sekou. His reputation for playing and his personality is why he will be playing into his 90s. So he's putting that out there for you. I really, really love that guy. That's Rich Bedo, Figure 11, Saint Asonia.
Wow.
So, how about that?
That's definitely the quote to end on quotes. I mean, I need him to come in and make sure he does speaks to my funeral. Let's just say that.
Yeah, he'll do the eulogy.
Exactly. He'll shut it all down, man.
Hey, it's not every day you know, at noon you get a quote like that to start the day.
Dude, that means, what a sweetheart. That means so much, man. That means so much.
So in preparation for this interview, I infiltrated 2 Facebook fan groups for Big Rec. And I talked to the fans. I got to know the fans and I asked them if they were doing the interview, what questions would they ask? What do they want to know the answers to? So there's lots of questions sprinkled out throughout this interview from the 2 groups, and I'll give them a shout out. And here's the first one. So this is from the Big Rec fan group that has 8,100 fans in it. And this is from Brandy Charlton. They ask, I would like to know some personal information about Sekou outside of the band, upbringing, personal influences, SIN number, address. What are the people or things in his life outside of music that brings him joy? And just let him know that his talent is phenomenal and that he is loved. So that's from Brandy. So we're going to dive into your history and all that. I guess the part of that question is, what are the people and things outside of music that bring you joy? That's a question that I wouldn't have asked, but it's a good one.
Right. That's a great question for sure. Things and people outside music. Certainly my wife. My wife is, not to be a cornball, my wife is, she's my best friend. We've been very close for the duration, obviously, of our relationship. And she has a really unique gift of taking this really, like, if I care about it, she cares about it. And she will, to the point where, like, even with drumming, like, she knows how much I love drumming and my drums and my gear. And this girl who cannot play a lick of music to save her life knows what tension rods are, what bearing edges are, you know what I mean, what snare strands are, and all these, all these things that are part of our universe are just, it's a language that we speak. She's picked it up over the years to the point where she will often give me advice on, when I'm trying to set something up or pick something or whatever it is. Like, I can talk to her like I talk to you, about drumming and stuff. So, and it in turn then makes me care about her interest and what she loves and things like that. So I've gotten to learn about, like, makeup and stuff like that because she loves it as much as I love drums.
Do you wear any makeup on tour in her honor? Or what?
I don't. I'm blessed with really good skin. So she keeps telling me so far, so good. But I'd be down. I don't care. I've worn makeups for videos before. I'm there for it, man. It's all good. So definitely my my wife is my partner. She's when I'm on tour, like she's somebody that I wish was like, if I had the ability to hire her as an assistant or something, just to bring with just to see the world and see the things we get to see and experience, the things we get to experience, I absolutely would. As far as the interest, I have been a gamer for a few decades now, at different levels, but I've always taken a really big interest in the video game industry, not just playing it, but like just following the actual business of it and following what happens with publishers and developers and and just following just the general news of the industry. It's something that I'm pretty passionate about and I know a lot about. I just find it really fascinating. I don't play as much as I'd like. I don't have a lot of time for it, but it's something that I know a lot about, and I have a few friends, who are execs at Xbox and a few friends with PlayStation and stuff. So it's something I'm always endlessly fascinated by. Outside of that, I'm a pretty quiet guy. I spend a lot of time when I'm not working, just a lot of time at home, just relaxing. I'm trying to read more, trying to read a lot of books on self-help. I just read a great book called Atomic Habits on creating positive habits in your life that will make some pretty fundamental changes in how you view yourself and your confidence levels and things like that. So that's been a new hobby, just trying to read more and change my diet and things like that. But other than that, I work a fair bit. So especially now things are happening again. So what else other than gaming? What else?
That's a great book by James Clear. I read it a couple of years ago, and
I'm gonna read it again. I just finished it. I'm gonna start over and read it again, I think.
Yeah, he helps people just want to change habits. They don't realize that it's not like the final thing of like, oh, I want to stop smoking. It's like all this stuff leading up to it. It's like you got to change your habits, the way you think about it. It's like repetition. It's giving yourself a reward, all those things.
Oh, there's an anecdote he has in there about smoking where he says two people are outside taking a work break, and that one person, they both get off for a cigarette, and the one man says, "No, thanks, I'm trying to quit." And the woman says, "No, thanks, I don't smoke anymore." Right? So there's two completely different ways of you. If you view yourself as somebody who does that thing, then you can become a person. If you say, I'm an athlete, and then you wake up and you just put on your shoes, and you don't actually get to the gym, but you've made the first step an athlete would make to working out. And then you just kind of build on that. So those things were really, I don't have to tell you, they're really eye-opening. And they really helped me change. Like I have a schedule now in the morning that I have a list of things that I do. And when I get them out of the way, I feel way better about my day because I've accomplished so much before I've even stepped out the front door. So
yeah. You're basically living the dream with the wife that you love, playing music full time, video games and reading. Like that's like my perfect life. So congrats. There's a trophy or something that you deserve.
Thank you. Well, there's push and pull to all of it, right? Like there's pros and cons to all of it. But I think the main thing is just to, especially with what's happened to all of us with this lockdown, is I feel like we've kind of come out of this change as people socially, personally, with things, amount of anxiety I think everyone deals with as well. It's changed and it's gotten to be a real beast for me, certainly. So just finding some things that create pattern and balance in life, I find are really good ways to feel like you can come out on top of those anxious things or those depressive things in a given day. If you can, what was the line he had in the book where if you have, what's that Mark Twain line? If you have 2 frogs to eat, start with the largest one first. And it's a line that basically means like, if you have a thing you don't want to do, whether it's exercising or whatever it is, get it done first, and then you do the other things. And the hardest thing you've had to do that day is not out of the way. And I find that little thing is really, with the way my brain's been during the pandemic, of just waking up every day and playing video games, waking up and watching YouTube, or waking up and doing nothing, over the time, it's kind of really affected my output, and even just how I interact with other people and things. So it's been another part of getting back out and doing shows, has just been being around people and around fans and around bandmates and crew guys and stuff, and just working those muscles again. Like it's been a while.
And another thing about why it's important to do those big, most important things first thing in the morning is your resolve and your energy levels are at their highest at the start of the day. But also there's something called attention units. So I'll explain this real quick, is that a person only has so many attention units before they're burnt out. So let's say everyone wakes up with 10 attention units. And this is something that goes back to like Steve Jobs and all those entrepreneur geniuses, is you notice that Steve Jobs always had like the same jeans, the same black turtleneck. And it's, if you wake up and you're going through all your clothes and like, oh, what shirt and does this match and this and that, you're using one of your 10 attention units. And, then should I do coffee or should I stop here, Tim Hortons or Starbucks? That's another attention unit. So the genius is take away all decision making. It's the same clothes, the same food, the same everything except for what's important. So they're not using up any energy units. And basically, if you get, say you get to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and with everything you've done of going to the gym and all these different things, you have no energy, attention units left. So you can't really get into the flow state on that one project. You wanted to write a book and it's just not coming to you. Wow. So if you can do those things early in the morning, you're using up your attention units for the things that matter. So that's something that I've read about. And I don't know if that resonates with anyone.
Did you read that? Where's that from?
I have no idea. It seems like I'm making it up right now, but over the years, like I've studied millionaires and billionaires for years, and that's come up before. And they had different examples, like Steve Jobs with his, turtleneck and jeans. That was because of attention units that he was saving. So
that is wild. I'm gonna look into that, man. That seems like something that I would really benefit from. That's really wild. Huh.
Yes. So the question from the fan that we got from Brandy, it started by asking about your upbringing and personal influences. So let's give the people what they want. Let's go back to the beginning. So you're clearly passionate about music. You make a living with music. Where does this love of music come from? And do you have an earliest musical memory?
Yeah. I want to say, so I grew up, just for some background, I was born in the Caribbean. I was born in Trinidad. I came to Canada when I was 11, maybe 12 years old. I gotta ask my mom. I can never remember. So, in Trinidad, I grew up in a household where there was a lot of music in the household, but it was a lot of a very specific type of music. It was calypso and soca, a little bit of reggae, I suppose. But it was mostly like, island music, calypso and soca. And so, which is funny because those, I respect them, but those aren't types of music that I'd ever played ever on a gig or ever been asked to play. And I don't listen to it by myself, but so I grew up in a household where there was a lot of music playing, just not music that really spoke to me per se. When we moved to Canada, I lived in Montreal for about 5 or 6 years, and then eventually Ottawa for a bit. And I just fell in love with a band. So I didn't have a pull at all to the instrument or any instruments until I fell in love with this British band called Level 42. And just something, they had a big song called Something About You. And a few others after that were, not as colossal as that one. But for some reason, I just really, I just connected with that band. I don't know, it was like a British pop pop, band, and I just connected with it, and I just zeroed in on them. They were my first favorite band, effectively, right? And the lead singer was the bass player, so I was going to play bass because I wanted to jump around in my bedroom, and I think I built a bass out of metal siding and like a piece of board and some fishing wire. And when I thought no one was looking, I'd go in the living room at night, and I mean, my family knew what I was doing, and I would like crank the stereo and jump around like he used to play slap bass. I just like sing and play slap bass and be in my own little world. So I did that for a long time, for maybe a couple of years, and just as luck would have it, luck. I was a terrible kid. And I used to get into a lot of fights and start fires and steal. And so just out of frustration, my mom didn't know what to do. So in the Caribbean, what we do is if you are a bad kid, you don't get a tutor, you get sent to a disciplinarian relative who will whip you into shape, either literally or figuratively. And in my case, it was my uncle who lived in Winnipeg, who never laid a finger on me.
But that's the punishment when someone gets sent to Winnipeg for those wingers.
Sorry, Winnipeg, I love you, but yeah. And so I was removed from my friend base and from all my stuff and everything. And I spoke with this guy who was very strict and laid the law down. You couldn't spend more than 5 minutes on the phone call, more than 10 minutes in the shower. You had to come home with straight A's. Like, it was a whole thing. But all that to say, I ended up making a couple friends that school year that were drummers. They were the guys who took me in. They happened to be drummers, these two guys. I had no interest in the instrument whatsoever. It was just something that they did. And because they were my friends and I wanted to stay tight with them, I started, I stole a pair of mismatched drumsticks from band class. And I would go home and just listen to my ghetto blaster and listen to the sounds and try to figure out what was going on, just so I could come back and be part of the conversations they were having about the first two Red Hot Chili Peppers album, or the Pogues, or the Sex Pistols, or all these bands I'd never heard of, and living in my little Caribbean household. And this was 15, 16, so you're still pretty impressionable. So I did that for the better part of a year, maybe a little longer, just practicing on my knee and doing that, not ever playing on a kit really. And one of them had a kit, so we would go to the one guy's house who had a kit, and we would take turns playing poorly. And they were both trained. They were both taking music in school, and I wasn't. I just was teaching myself. And I think one day the three of us were sitting around, and we were playing along. I want to say it was like a Bon Jovi song, of all things. And we're trying to figure out a fill going into a chorus, and they couldn't figure it out. And I just was like, "Oh, isn't it this?" And they both kind of looked at me like, and that was the first time kind of a light went on where I was like, maybe I'm okay. Maybe I'm good at this. Maybe this is just something. The thing is, like, Joel, I hated it. Like, I did for the first year, I couldn't stand it. I just didn't. It was something I did because other people were doing. Until that moment where it was like a light went on, and I was like, maybe this is something that I can get better at and be known for, So from there, it just took off, and I just I developed a real passion for the instrument and finding guys that I loved who played. And then I went back to level 42 and was like, that drummer is incredible. How did I sleep on this guy? He's amazing. And started trying to, falling down those rabbit holes of just learning to play those the way he was playing. And a couple of the guys that I grew up with, a lot of my friends in Winnipeg were like, "Oh, you're Black, you skateboard, so you'd be into Fishbone." And I was like, "Well, that's racist, but holy fuck, you're right. I am really
but accurate."
But holy shit, I guess I am into them. Oh my God. And so that was, Rich spoke to just being a chameleon or just doing different things. That was Fisher, during Fishbone, was the guy who kind of made that, put that in front of my face of like, well, here's a guy who will go from playing ska to playing punk to playing metal to playing thrash to playing funk to playing big band, and when he does every idiom, it's actually, it's exactly what Rich said. Like, you would think that's all that guy does for a living. And I always found that really fascinating, to just be able to change gears, oftentimes within a song, to change gears really drastically and make it seem like it was the easiest thing in the world. So at a very young age, it was something. And also, you know, because at the time I was a kid, I was a Black kid who was hearing Black people play music that I didn't know we could play. I didn't know we could do metal. I didn't know we could do, hardcore and all this stuff, and punk and all this stuff. So it was really eye-opening, and it then informed my ear to other styles of music, like getting into Slayer and eventually getting into Slipknot and getting into like, Death Angel and all these bands that like I wouldn't have had a pull to, but now I'm kind of getting a crash course by listening to Fishbone and how Fish approaches playing drums to what it takes to make these styles of music. So it was, I crack on Winnipeg, but if I hadn't moved there, if I hadn't lived with my uncle there, I wouldn't be speaking to you today. Like, I can tell you that very, very easily. Like, I had no pull. I wasn't one of those kids who played on pots and pans or pillows. I never had a pull to the instrument. It just, I just fell into it, and I'm so glad I did. It's, it's become, I like you. I love music. Music is a life's blood. I really feel that if I didn't have it, I don't know what I would do. So being passionate about it and being passionate about different styles of music, whether it's Shaka Khan or fucking, Fire in the Flames by, I forget what that band's called, but but whatever, like they both give me goosebumps. They both make me feel the same way for different reasons, and being able to recreate that is so important to me. So yeah, that's a very long-winded answer, but yeah, that's where I started from, and that's kind of what drives a lot of my motivation when I play.
So I have a quote here from someone that loves music as much as you do, and that you have bonded with this person over a mutual love of Fishbone. So this is from Darren Mr. D. Dumas of the Salads. He is like Mr. Fishbone. So he says, I believe Sekou and I first met in the early 2000s when I was putting together lineups for the Salad Gold events. And it seemed like he was playing drums for every other act on those bills. I also seem to recall him visiting HMV on Yonge Street, where I worked at that time, and we would talk music. We've always connected on our love for the legendary Fishbone, all in capitals. And I fondly recall geeking out in conversation with him about our love of 24/7 Spies during his short time playing with them. Sekou is not only one of the most talented drummers in Canada, but also an incredibly friendly and humorous, check out his Instagram account, and super lovely guy I am thankful to call a friend. I hope to cross paths with him again soon. So Mr. D from the Salads.
Yeah, that guy knows his stuff, man. That guy knows his stuff. He knows his Fishbone. He's been so fortunate. He's developed a relationship with that entire band over the years that and just from being tenacious, just from constantly being like, hey, I'm a fan. And also, I mean, the Salads, I don't know if you ever heard them, but oh my God.
So he's talking about that HMV on Yonge Street. As a teenager, I waited in line for hours at the Future Shop that's around there to get their autograph. So I have a picture with the Salads where I'm like spiked bleached hair as a teenager. Nice. So that's how far we go back.
Wow. Yeah, that was a hell of a band. And their drummer, Grant, oh my God, that guy just put me to shame. Just his double bass drum and his speed on the instrument was just something else. We got to, because I've gotten to know Fish over the years. He knows the guys in the band, and I've gotten to somehow just through friends and stuff, gotten to know Philip Fisher, who is, again, like, so there's two guys, there's two Phils. There's Phil Gould from Fishbone, who was the first drummer I kind of paid attention to, who just opened the world up. And then there was Fisher, who was the guy in Fishbone who kind of effectively taught me that, you know, to play different styles is really where it's at. And subsequently who I end up kind of modeling my let's say the heavier side of things is mostly modeled after Fish. And so it was a really big deal some years ago to meet him. I'd seen him at shows and gone up to him and told him what he meant to me and stuff, which I'm sure, you know, he's been told it 1,000 times. He's a seminal drummer for a seminal band. So over the years, we've just gotten to know each other, and I forget what happened that I actually finally got his phone number, or he gave me his phone number. I might have reached on Facebook or Instagram or something, but yeah, I've hung out with them. I can text him right now, which still blows my mind that I have that relationship with him. That, you know, and if he comes to Toronto, he's like, "Hey, are you in town? Do you want to go get some sushi or something?" Like it blows my mind. And just I'll see that and I'll like screenshot it and like, you know, think about laminating the text. Like he's that big a deal to me. So getting to take a couple lessons with them has been eye-opening. Yeah, just, you know, they say never meet your heroes, but he was somebody that I always thought was the A, and I'm letter Z in the alphabet. So meeting him is just, you know. And then anecdotally, not a lot of people know this, but yeah, I did do the 27 Spies thing for a hot second for the better part of a year, and then had my gig stolen by Fish.
How dare he?
Which I sort of don't mind in a way, but yeah, that was wild, but yeah, so it's comes full circle, I guess, huh?
Yeah, you mentioned where you when you figured out how to play that drum fill, that you realized, oh, I might have some talent on this instrument. Mm-hmm. But at what point did you realize that maybe you could do this as a career? That, hey, I'm good enough, that I have a skill to offer that people might be willing to pay for, and maybe I can make enough that this is the only thing I do as a career?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there were a couple moments. One was the kind of the spark, and the other one was kind of the push that made me decide to do it. And I was playing in Ottawa, and I wasn't doing professionally. I was just playing in like bands, just, you know, in so many bands. And I had to do a gig of all things for this rap group. These three kids, like rappers. They weren't of anyone of note. They had no fans. They were doing a battle of the bands, and they'd seen me play with some other bands, and they'd asked me to play for them for this hip hop battle of the bands thing. That was actually at a school or something. And the big claim to fame was that this rapper of note at the time from Toronto, this guy named Socrates, or Sox, was one of the judges. And if you won, I think they won like some recording time with him producing them. And so I did this battle of bands. It was terrible. The group was terrible, but, you know, I did my best. And as I was like walking out to like catch a cab with my drums, Socrates actually came running after me. He's like, hey, what's your name? Who are you? And I'm like, I'm Sekou. I'm just from Ottawa, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, you're really good, and I would love to work with you. I'm producing this new artist who's kind of like an old school R&B singer that would love you to play drums for. Her name is Julie Black, and she doesn't have anything out yet, but I would love for you to play through. If you're ever down there, just let me know, because I think you could make a go of it if you want to do this. And it was the first time someone in the industry who had like videos and Junos and stuff had just unsolicited told me that it was worth taking a stab at. And so I was like, oh. And so from that point, I was always like, am I going to move to Toronto and be a drummer? Is that what's going to happen right now? I was probably like early 20s, 22, 21 or something.
The prophecy has been told. Socrates planted the seed there.
And I remember, and he gave me his phone number and said to call him. And I just was like, you know, when you're young and someone gives you that kind of nudge, it's all you need. You might as well tell me, like, I'm going to make it. And so I kept thinking about it. And at the time I was with a girl, and we were living together, and, you know, life was doing okay. And I was playing again. I think, if I remember correctly, I was playing in 13 different projects, like active. I'm not talking like people who just, I was a drummer for sometimes. I'm talking people who had gigs all the time, 13. And it was like, you know, I was renting a place with a bunch of people. And I remember them telling me, like, the only thing you do here is you come back home, you shower, you change your clothes, and you leave. Why are you paying rent? Like, this is stupid. You know, like, I was just always working. And it got to a point where I remember, so this was the other moment where I was like, I got to make a go of this professionally, and I got to move to Toronto. But I was supposed to go home to visit my grandmother in Trinidad for a couple of weeks. And someone called me, one of the bands I was in, and said, hey, they're doing a Funkapalooza. They're doing like a big funk fest at Barrymore's with like 7 bands. And they asked us to do it. Can you do it? And I was like, I would love to, can't go home and train that. Like, it's too bad. Okay, whatever. A couple hours later, another band I'm in called and said, hey, they're doing Funkapalooza. They want us to play. And I'm like, oh, it's funny. Such and such just called me. Would love to, can't, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. 45 minutes later, a third band called that I was in. Had to say no. I'll flash forward to the end of the day. Funkapalooza got called off because 7 of the 9 bands was me on drums, because it was such a small fishbowl. You know what I mean? It was, and it wasn't necessarily that I was the only guy for the job, but I was the guy that people just called first for the gig, and I just took all the gigs. And so I was like, this place is too small. This place is definitely too small, and I need to go somewhere where there's a bigger bowl where I can work with more people, maybe people of more substance. So I talked to my girlfriend time about it, and she was, God bless her, she was like, we have to go. I was like, well, what are you gonna do? She's like, I'll figure it out. I'll find a job, but we gotta go. So we moved here, and a friend that lived in Toronto took me out. I want to say the second night I got here to College Street, which, as you know, for Toronto is like, there's the Orbit Room, there's College Street Bar, there's Revival, there's Vivo, there's, what's the other place down the street? Point being, there's a bunch of places where you can just go and see people playing music. And he took me out to see some bands play. And I immediately regretted my decision, because I saw some of the illest players. And at the time, like, it's funny because these guys have all, you know, it's a small scene. I know all of the, not just the drummers, but the guys in the bands now and stuff. But I didn't realize it. But I just happened to have walked into 4 venues where Mark Kelso was playing. You know, who's like, if you don't know Mark Kelso, he's like a legendary Canadian drummer. He's done a ton of movie scores. He's played for Gino Vanelli. He's played for some big Italian artists he's played with. Anyway, he's a phenomenal educator and drummer. He was playing. The next place I walked into, Schumacher Ali was playing drums. And Schumacher's played for the Gap Band and the SOS Band and Al Green and stuff. So I'm watching this legendary, dyed-in-the-wool R&B legend, and I've never heard of any of these guys before. But so to me, they're just guys I'm walking and seeing playing the most insane shit I've ever seen.
You realize there are levels to this game.
There are levels to this game. The next place was Davide Di Lorenzo, who's played with a bunch of Canadian legendary people. And Davide's become one of my favorite drummers. He's one of these guys who plays just what the music calls for until you need him to turn it on, and then he will melt your face. And then Randy Cook was at some other place. And I was like, yeah, this was a mistake. I am not any of these guys, and I should not have been here. I'm going to die on the vine. And as it turned out, that just makes you want to be better. It makes you want to up your game and up your stock so you can play with these people who are now your contemporaries, and you can play stuff just to hold your own and tread water. so, so those were the moments at the beginning that kind of made me go like, okay, maybe I can do it. I had some really good feedback from people and from my situation that kind of told me that it was safe to make a jump, to that professionally.
Do you think that back when you were playing with like up to 13 bands at once, do you think that helped you to develop your drum skill quickly? Because the 10,000 hour theory, it's like you're able to squish in 10,000 hours faster than most because it was like a 13 times multiplier,
I wonder, I don't know if it did or not. I do know back then, because I was playing so much, I was pretty, lack of a better word, I was pretty arrogant. Not outwardly arrogant to people, but internally I felt like I could take whoever's gig because I sort of was doing it and because people were just calling all the time. So I don't think all that to say, I don't think I was pushing or learning a lot because I was just people hiring me for what I did and who I was. I think moving to Toronto really sharpened me because I was playing with people who were of a level I'd never seen before. And I was seeing guys who were playing things that were like, oh, I better get my shit together and learn this stuff because it's kind of the norm. It's expected that these types of, have these tools in your toolbox. So I think more than anything, it was Toronto that really had me learning stuff quickly. I got lucky enough to play with an artist named Ivana Santilli, who was with a band called Bass is Bass, who had done they were just like a household name back there. And Ivana people were very much waiting for her debut albums, which I got to be on. And then she had a single that was a drum and bass song that was blowing up the radio up over here for the better part of a year. And so we toured a lot. So, and then playing with just different bands that really had me just learning things from people that were like, okay, this is not a joke. You are not the biggest fish in a small pond anymore. And you can't get by on the things that you think were enough. Now you have to learn, at the time I was doing a lot of R&B gigs and that style of playing, that Questlove, D'Angelo style of that lazy type of R&B way of playing was a new thing that people were getting into. And I was turning left and right and seeing other guys pulling it off me. Like, I don't know how to do this because it doesn't make any sense. Putting your kick drum behind the beat and your hi-hat ahead of it and your snare, but I figured it out because if I didn't, I definitely wouldn't, my phone would have stopped ringing, So Toronto really played a big part in helping me grow quickly as a drummer.
So you mentioned seeing all these amazing drummers in Toronto. I have a quote here from a Toronto drummer that's gone on to become one of the most iconic, legendary drummers in Canada. This is from Glenn Milczyn of Blue Rodeo. So he says, Sekou is a fantastic drummer. His playing just seems to flow out of him effortlessly. He's also hilarious. This keeps coming up to follow on social media and very candid about challenges he faces as a pro musician. Like in a recent video where he talked about a crisis of confidence that he went through and how he dealt with it. When someone plays with the certainty he does, but can still be frank about dealing with his insecurities as a musician, he's sharing a really important lesson. Big respect to Sekou. So that's Glenn Milczyn from Blue Rodeo.
Wow, man, you're killing me with these accolades from these people that these are all people that I think really, really, really highly of. Glenn and I have only crossed paths a few times, but there's an instant kinship there. And I have such a love for the stuff he's done with Blue Rodeo. Like with Darren, like we're good friends and we've hung out a bunch and talked Fishbone a bunch. But it's nice to know when you're just working your butt off that you can look up and that kind of, that's the impression that you left with people. It's always nice to hear that from people. As far as the struggles and stuff, I made a video a little while ago about performance anxiety, because it's something I've dealt with for a long time. Again, speaking to just being in situations where you're with these incredible A-list musicians and you just want to do your best, but you don't think you're the best. You know, you either, whether it's suffering from imposter syndrome or just being insecure about your playing in general, or just seeing guys who just do a style of thing that you're like, I couldn't in a million years play that way. You know, it'll get to you. And there's a lot of that in Toronto, as there would be in most any place, I'd imagine. But Toronto is very concentrated for the amount of talent you can just turn around and see. Or you can just share a stage with, if like from the keyboard player, from the singer, from the bass player. So it can get to you after a while. And for me, it's something I've dealt with a lot over the years, especially with the proliferation of social media. You know, you can, I made a video just talking about it. You can just go on YouTube or go on Instagram or TikTok. And if you want to spend 5 minutes on the can looking at your phone, you will see 36 drummers that you've never heard of who are 10 years younger than you, who will play things that just blow your mind, you know? And that's that trip to the can that day. Like tomorrow, it's a different, you know, it's insane what technology and social media have kind of brought to our doorstep. And it's incredible to watch. It's fun to watch. It can be inspiring to watch for sure, but it is daunting and really, really intimidating. And I don't care who you are, you'd be hard pressed to not feel like you're not good enough. If you ingest too much of it, which I think we all do. It's just, especially with the pandemic, again, going back to that, we're locked up and we have nothing to do but spend time on our phones and on our computers looking at this stuff. I know I did. So, you know, it really affected my playing, and affected when I would sit behind the kit, I would feel just like, if I have a basket full of stuff that I can play, I could only pull out like 2 things, you know, out of the basket, until I would go back and look at a video of myself playing that same performance and be like, why didn't you play this? Why didn't you play? You can do this in your sleep. But because I'm so anxious and worried about doing the wrong thing and so critical of what I'm doing at a given moment when I'm behind the kit, that not only was I not enjoying anything I was doing, but I also wasn't representing myself very well. I wasn't playing all the stuff I could play because I was so worried about making mistakes. So yeah, I just made a video talking about it. We had done a show a month and a half ago somewhere, and then I'd gone to a bar afterward with my wife, and a drummer came up to me and was like, "Hey man, big fan of yours," and started talking and said, like, what do you do when you feel, did you ever feel nervous? Do you ever feel, because you don't look like you do, but when you did, Sekou, what did you do? And in talking to him, I realized like, oh, this is something that, and saying like, dude, I was nervous on that stage you're talking about. I was nervous then. I played a fill now. And the whole time I'm playing, I'm critical of everything. I'm like, oh, that beat felt a little rushed, or that fill was, you need to play that there. Just being really critical and tearing myself apart at every moment. It was such a fabric of my playing, the noise in my head when I played, that I didn't realize that it was the same way for a lot of people. So I made that video and was really blown away. Joel, like, I can't tell you, like, it's the response I've gotten from people who've come up to me or DM'd me or left comments or whatever, just saying like, thank you for making that. Like, I thought I was the only one, you know, and you hear that cliche all the time. Like, you know, I thought I was the only one, but I was blown away that it was such a common feeling with everybody. And so for me, one of the things I had to do was just to talk about it, you know, to people and be honest about it. And then say like, hey, one of the things that we can do about this is we can maybe try looking at that stuff less. Like, it's fun to look at it. I get it. It's amazing to look at and to laugh at and to be inspired by, if that's your thing, if you can be inspired by it. But I feel that we don't have a shut-off valve when it comes to ingesting that stuff. And if that's the case, it's going to affect how you view your output in the world. It's going to make you depreciate what you're bringing to the table, and it's going to make you insecure about what you can do, what you haven't done yet that you're able to do, you know? So I find that just ingesting that stuff, like now when I look at it for maybe a couple of minutes and I go, oh my God damn it, Larnell, Jesus. Okay, that's enough of that. You know, and I move on with my day, and I go and I teach myself to play double bass drum pedal or work on something that a goal I can achieve. So,
I think one of the reasons why that video resonated with so many people is normally when someone is in a band, like, you know, Big Rec is a multi-platinum band, all these hit singles over the decades on the radio, playing big shows. It's normally those people are like put on a pedestal, and, you know, they have the rock star vibe of like, you know, I'm up here on stage and you're the peasants down there. And this goes back to, you know, Led Zeppelin, when it was like the rock stars of rock stars. And so I think when they see someone that's in that class of success of rock star, that person is being transparent, that person's being vulnerable, even though that's needed and appreciated, we don't see that very often. So I think maybe that's why it stood out, where, you know, people that are talented but haven't achieved anywhere near the level of success you've achieved, you know, they're thinking, you know, am I good enough, or all these people are better? But they can't imagine that someone like you is thinking that as well. So,
and it's wild because, like, I even had, our bass player at Big Red was like, dude, I saw the video. He goes, we got to talk. He goes, I had no idea. He goes, I feel that way tonight. I feel that way all the time. So it's wild that it's like just people around people that, you know, of all different walks of life and levels and stuff, you know, go through it. And I again, not to, you know, whip a dead horse too much, but I really do feel that the amount of time we spent online in the last couple of years has exacerbated that, has made it worse. It certainly has for me, you know, and it makes you give up, you know, and it's just sad because it doesn't have to be that you compare yourself to other people. It doesn't. It's actually better if you don't. I'm finding that I'm doing stuff now that, like, I probably stupidly, I'm going to admit something I've not really ever admitted to anyone before, but when I was coming up in the early 90s, when I was playing in the late 90s and early aughts, when the R&B thing was showing up, when you had all these guys playing with these crazy, you know, playing over vocalists who were totally fine with them, like playing fills over the bar line, all these crazy arrangements and stuff, like, I saw it happening and it was really exciting. And I tried it for a hot second, then realized it was just a bit outside my skill level, or that it was something that I'd have to really dedicate my time to getting good at. And I didn't do it. And I told myself at the time that it was a phase, that it would pass. And that at some point, people like me and people who played like me would be back to being recognized for the things we brought to the table, rather than trying to sound like this guy for Mary J. Blige or that guy for, you know, Destiny's Child, whoever it was. And I did that for a long time. And when I realized I was wrong and it wasn't a phase and it was the way that music and that style of drumming was moving, it was too late for me. It was too late to go back and try and, or I felt it was too late. Maybe it wasn't, but I felt I'd missed the boat on it. And so I've been living in a world for a number of years where, and I'm not just talking R&B, like it's the same with metal, and it's the same with like jazz. There's certain things that I got intimidated by, and rather than trying to learn more about it and open myself to it, I told myself to stick to my ways of being. So the last few decades have been really tough because there have been guys who I am better in certain regards, where I can play, let's just say, more in certain regards, but they have a certain thing, whether it's double bass drum or whether it's odd time signatures or whether it's playing a certain R&B style, whatever it is that they can do in their sleep that I can't do, that I'm now hobbled by because I didn't take the time to, you know, to figure it out. So it's good to be I'm 49 as of last month. And, you know, I'm playing in a band now. I've kind of scaled back. The pandemic kind of made all my gigs bad, right? Most of them. I still get called for things, but it's by and large, I use it as an opportunity to kind of scale back and say, okay, well, now that I don't have to play all this stuff, let me focus on Big Rec. Let me try and make that what I do. I'll still do the occasional recording on this thing for people and stuff, and I do commercials and jingles and things like that. But as far as music goes, let me commit to one band and see what that does for me musically. So I said goodbye to Serena and my other commitments, and I've just kind of been focused on Big Rec, and I've noticed that I've been doing way more growing and just not trying to compare myself to this guy who plays that style of music or this guy who plays this style, or, you know, Larnell is a good friend. Like Larnell, you know, we share gigs. Like I've called him to do gigs that I can't do. And I'm nowhere near Larnell's level. Please don't take this that I'm saying that.
Don't get it twisted.
Don't get twisted. Nobody's on Larnell's level. He's one of the most beautiful, incredible players I've ever heard. Like not having to think about that stuff and just thinking about what I bring to the table with Big Rec, and just what the music calls for and how I can best serve the songs and amplify what happens off the records in a live show is kind of my main focus now. And I found that I've been doing a lot more growing. I taught myself after a number of years of trying and giving up. I taught myself to play double bass drum fairly competently. You know, I've learned more tricks just because I've been focused on being a better me for the band that I'm in, rather than trying to be Larnell or this guy or that guy or that guy or that guy, you know?
So you mentioned that you're now focused on your drumming with Big Rec. There's a new album on the way. It's broken down into EPs. So I'd like to quickly go through all the amazing artists that you've played drums for, and then spend a lot of time at the end on Big Rec, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So in 2001, you started playing drums for Cardinal Official, another one of these Canadian hip hop legends, you know, groundbreakers. I saw him play in Ottawa in a dance club about 15 years ago. And then I saw him at Celebration Square in Mississauga for Canada Day, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And his setup was he had a drummer, a bass player, him, and a DJ. Was that the same setup that he had when you were playing with him? And what was your favorite part of playing with him? Man, that guy brings the energy and knows how to get a crowd going.
Dude, I mean, I was his first drummer in the band he had with me, and it was the first band. And I think I remember the lightning strike moment of him realizing that was the way to go. Because I think at the time, I got the gig through a guitar player friend who knew him. And he, when Cardinal mentioned he wanted to maybe work the band, he wasn't sure. You know, I think he tried it once before somewhere and he hated it. And it was because the drummer played really loud, I was told. But I think at the time the Roots were fairly, you know, prominent. And I think he wanted that energy. We were doing a tour opening for Shaggy. Well,
Shaggy.
Yeah, Shaggy.
Mr. Lova Lova.
That's right. A multi month or a week rather tour opening for him, and he wanted to put a band together. Or I think, no, sorry, let me rephrase it. He had to put a band together. The only way Shaggy would bring him out, management told him, was like, you have to have a band. You can't go up there with tracks and the DJ. So he was like, fine. So he spoke to my guitar player friend, who then contacted me. And I think we rehearsed before he came in just to get stuff sounding just right. And when he came in and saw what we had done, it was like I said, like a light switch. Was like, this is what I gotta do. If I really want to bring this type of energy, this is what I gotta do. And man, I had seen him play before and saw him, you know, as a rapper on stage, just with a couple hype men and a DJ. But his energy with the band just went through the roof. Like he was just vibing off it. He had us doing some James Brown style shots and things like that, which he thought was just the most amazing thing. He could like, give me a two, that. You know, he loved the flexibility and the freedom of that. So we did that tour. That tour was funny because we started the tour. I brought all my drums, and they were like, "Oh yeah, no, you're not setting up your kit. You're gonna play Shaggy's drummer's drum kit," which at the time was a problem because that guy had he was a roster dude. And for some reason, he played a setup that was just like, it was like, I don't know, a mounted 8-tom and like a 12 and a 14 floor. His cymbals were like, I remember having like almost straight in my hand to hit cymbals.
Was he 7'1" or what?
He was a really tall guy, but he also just like playing like this. His ride was like up here, and and they were like, and you can't touch anything except your seat height. Change your seat height, that is it. Put your snare on there, that is it. So I had to work with it, and you know, playing some fairly nimble stuff behind Cardinal, but so it was a bit of a mind fuck having to just constantly be like holding on for dear life every time I played. But playing with him was amazing. He just had such a respect for the musicians he worked with, and just such, as you pointed out, like just such an energy level that then turned around and fed us, you know, to just give our best every night. And then from there, we did a handful of events. I think there might have been like a Much Music something or other, and a few other shows, but we didn't do much more outside of that one tour and a handful of dates. But it was really fun.
I'm glad he saw the light about having a band on stage, because you know, I've been to a ton of concerts, a lot of hip hop concerts. I was just at Blues Fest for the last 10 days in Ottawa, and there's a lot of hip hop acts. And whenever it's just one guy that comes out with a mic and that's it, like there's just tracks, I'm always disappointed. It's like I'm looking for some level of musicianship, and it's like they're talented on the mic, but it's like just staring at one guy the whole time. It's not enough. So you know, the greats like Jay-Z has a band when he's on tour, and you know, seeing someone like the Roots, where they're all incredible musicians. To me, again, like when you said you saw those incredible drummers in Toronto, and there's levels to this game of drumming, to me, there's levels to the live show of hip hop artists when they have just tracks, or one step up is they have a physical DJ with them, and then the next level up is they have a legit band playing.
And you know what some bands are doing? I know Drake did this for a while. I was talking to Adrian, his drummer. Some artists are actually going to, they want the energy of the band, but they actually don't want to see the band. They want the whole show to be like a video wall. They throw stuff on. So Drake will actually put the band under the stage.
Like an orchestra.
Yeah. So like directly on stage, the drummer's there, the keyboard player. I think he's just down to a drum and keyboard player now. I think he's turfed his guitar and bass player. So it's just drum and keyboard playing a whole bunch of tracks and just crazy, you know, monstrous playing, you know, when it calls for it. But that's not all you see on stage is the corresponding video screen show to go with it. So they're taking the energy of the feeling of it, but replacing the visual of it with, like, you know, time code basically. So it's a different time, man.
Yeah.
How old are you, by the way?
I'm 37.
Okay, you're old enough to know of a time where, like, yeah, like we'd go out and see shows. You know,
shows. I miss shows. Yeah, I just saw Ja Rule on stage standing by himself. He was actually surprisingly good, to be honest. And he can sing, even though like he's a rapper and he has like the raspy voice. He's got really good pitch, and he is so jacked. Like there's got to be steroids going on. Like he is. What's that?
You know, he's an artist. He can let him do steroids. He's an artist.
Oh yeah, he does. He doesn't have to do any testing for the UFC, so why not?
Yeah. Exactly. That's funny. Yo, it's funny that you mentioned him. We just completely tangentially, like, but we did a show in London where the following night I was looking at the bill and it was 112, TLC, Ja Rule, all these massive acts from the aughts, from the early like 2000s, like all crammed into a bill together. Like I wish I could remember who else was on it. But it just,
so I just saw at Blues Fest it was Ja Rule headlining, TLC, and Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Bone Thugs and Harmony. That was the other act, and there were a couple more. And I was like, "What is going on? Like, how are you cramming these people in there?" And I was talking to our manager about it. Apparently, the promoter gets that you can buy that package of those guys, and you can do those shows every year. And then it's, I don't want to say what the money is. It's, each artist does not make a lot of money, but they all make the exact same amount of money. and everything else is taken care of. They just show up. There's no band, as you saw. It's just tracks and then maybe a DJ. And they go up there, and a lot of them have like maybe one hit. So that the set is like a half hour, and it's like all these people who were like, you could not throw a stick without hearing about one of these artists, and here they are like playing for, I'll just say, decently under 10K, like well under 10K per act to do those shows. But apparently the promoters rake in a ton of money on those shows.
The promoters got those bulk deals going on. Just bulk
Isn't
them all
crazy?
Together and send them out to casinos and
yeah. So they make what they make at each show, and they obviously it's not a lot per show, but they do a bunch of these shows, and by the end of a week, they've made a decent chunk of change. So, anyways, I just thought that was fucking fascinating.
No, I hear you. So after Cardinal, between 2002 2004, you played drums for Edwin. So for those that don't know, Edwin was the singer in the multi-platinum band I Mother Earth, and then after that went on to have a platinum career as a solo artist. I just saw the I Mother Earth reunion in Ottawa, where they had the band, they had both singers, Brian and Edwin. Yeah. And they played songs from all 4 albums, and it was amazing. So was there any kind of an adjustment period to go from the hip hop with Cardinal to the rock with Edwin?
No. So in addition to playing R&B and hip hop, my first bands were, I wouldn't say they were a rock band, but it was a band with distorted guitars. Let's just say that. And certainly like in punk bands. It was my first band. So I'm used to playing hard and playing loud rock stuff, as well as the other stuff that I had been known for playing at the time, which was more R&B and electronic stuff like drum and bass and house music and things. I did have a real love for playing heavier stuff. The Edwin stuff that I played in was decidedly more soft. The soft rock's a bad term because that's an actual thing. It was more pop rock, let's call it. It certainly wasn't. It was loud, but it certainly didn't have the teeth that something like Big Wreck or Big Sugar or something, or even I Mother Earth, let's just say, had. We did do some I Mother covers in that band, but by and large, the album that I was a part of and the songs we were promoting were more poppy rock. So it wasn't much of an adjustment. It was the first time I had done rock touring and seen that world, which was wild and eye-opening.
It was different from the hip hop tour with Cardinal.
Very, very, very different.
In what way?
Just the crews, just the audiences. It was the first time, just between you and me, my wife isn't here, but it was the first time I'd seen the girls' side of playing in rock band. Like
Edwin's a beautiful man. What can I say?
He's a beautiful man. There's a lot of beautiful women who came out to shows. And so it was the first time seeing that stuff. And I think it was the first time I had a drum tech. It definitely was the first time I had a drum tech. And so
moving on up.
Moving on up, exactly. I had someone changing my head and setting stuff up for me, and it was mind-blowing. And just, putting in the work every night to just play in arenas and playing in way bigger venues than the clubs I've been playing in my whole life. It was eye-opening in that regard for sure. Yeah.
And then in 2002 to 2005, you played drums for Thornley. So we're getting a connection in here with Ian Thornley of Big Wreck. And you actually played the drums on the debut album Come Again. And this is where I come in as a fan. So I was about 17, 18 when that came out. And I remember I was a huge fan. The 4 singles, So Far So Good, Come Again, Easy Comes, and Beautiful. That album, I remember listening to it. The sound was incredible. Like just the sound of that album is incredible. And I actually have a question here from a fan that has to do with that sound. So this is from a fan, Scott Morgan says, what's the secret to get such a kick you in the teeth drum sound that you have on the Come Again Thornley album? It is a dense, crunchy sound on that album.
Yeah. Well, Enough time's passed that I can pull the curtain back on that. That was, in terms of performing, that was not a fun album to make. I did not enjoy recording those songs. I love the songs, but the way that we tracked those songs was not the way that I originally understood we were going to track them. So we had done 2 or 3 weeks of pre-production with the songs. I just rehearsed them every day, 8 hours a day, and I had my EW kit with my well-tuned DW toms and my cymbals and stuff and everything. So I was used to playing a certain way and playing ideas I had for parts with my full drum kit and my drums tuned, like drums. And then we went in and I discovered Gavin Brown, who produced the album, who is a phenomenal producer. He's done like 3 Days Grace and Big Sugar. He's
also a drummer, right? So
also a really good drummer in his own way. He had some very decidedly different ideas on how to track stuff, and he had just come off the success of the 3 Days Grace stuff. So kind of what he wanted to do was what we were going to do, because we wanted to have that kind of success. And what that meant was recording on a mishmash Frankenstein kit of, I want to say it was like a 90, and this is how you track. So it is what it is. I'm not knocking the gear at all. But a 1940s 24-inch leady bass drum with no front head. I think I had a 14, and my set was like DW, like, 10, 12, 15, 16, 24. My snare was like a 14/7 or something, all fresh heads and yada, yada, yada. So going in, recording on leady with no front head, a shorter stack kick drum, a Rogers 14x14 floor tom as my mounted tom with a whole bunch of tape on it. It was more tape on the drum head than head. A 16-inch Ludwig, a 16 by something Ludwig floor with no bottom head on it. Again, a bunch of tape all over it. A host of different snares, obviously, and overdubbing all the cymbals afterwards. So all of a sudden, now all the parts I'm playing, where I'm playing fills, gone. Now I'm playing not 10, 12, 15, 16, 14, 16, 24 or whatever, with no front head, no hi-hat, no crashes. I can't write on the crash the choruses. So I've got to recontextualize, reconfigure all of my parts now. So, and then go back in and play the hi-hat. And then if I'm crashing on the chorus for coming in, I have to remember now the fill that I'm playing starts on the end of beat 3. So I have to come off the crash, because I wouldn't be playing, just completely threw everything out of the window for me. And then what we were going to do on top of that was a lot of those drum sounds were samples. So we used the drums for the girth, right? Which is why I didn't have to sound particularly lively. But then we went in, and I think at the time, God, I'm telling so many tales out of school here, but I think it's just enough time's passed.
This is the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, a magician giving his tricks. I like it. This is what the fans want. Give us the goods. Yeah.
He had a kit pack, a sample pack of Jose from Incubus's DW kit that I guess he'd known the engineer for some of the Incubus sessions, and he'd given him this pack of all his DW toms, well tuned, and different snare drums, and we used those and we layered those with the drum sounds we had, and that was the drum sound you hear. Is the performance is real, but the drum sounds are all flown in to give it that. And so the reason we were doing the hi-hat and the cymbals afterwards is because at the time Gavin's style was to record the drums with a lot of room mics. I want to say we had like 5 room mics. And the problem with hitting cymbals with a lot of room mics is, as you can guess, hit that crash and it's going to stick around right through the verse from the chorus, So the idea is to keep the drum sound, do the cymbals afterward with a different miking technique. which made sense in the end in terms of how we wanted the drums to sound on the record. But in terms of playing, it shot me in the foot. Like there's stuff I'm playing on there where I'm literally just trying to make stuff up as I'm playing it, because the thing I was going to play incorporated cymbals and drums, you know, at the same time, or incorporated more drums or smaller drums or more melodic drums. So it wasn't a pleasant experience for me. I learned a lot, and I knew enough at the time, having done a bunch of sessions by then, that like my thinking with tracking is like, don't say, like, I could have given them 1,000 reasons why it was a bad idea or why it wouldn't have worked, but I've done that before. And when something goes wrong, when someone's not happy with the finished product, the first person they look at is you, because they think, if Sekou just tried that idea, this would have sounded, you know, better. So my feeling has always been, for a long time, has always been like, just try it. Just even if they want you to play the snare on the 1 and 3s and the kicks and 2 and 4, and you know it's a bad idea, try it. Because it's not until you play it that people realize why it might not work, or, which has happened as well, like it might work and you might be totally wrong. You know what I mean? And it might be the perfect thing for the song. So my feeling was always like, as much as I was railing against playing without cymbals, you know, and overdubbing afterwards, I'm just like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put my best foot forward and really try and see this through, because I don't want to be the reason that this doesn't work, you know? And in the end, it worked out. My feelings aside of how it felt to play it, it served the record. And hearing back again, decades later, people like you and other people who are fans of the album and the songs, like it worked out, right? It worked out. Again, I'll tell a little school-out tale that has nothing to do with me, but like that 3 Days Grace record, I forget the name of it, but the one that blew them up, he recorded those drums. Those were V drums. You know what I mean?
Rich was saying on the Grace of Blue Skies that it was V drums as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you just do what you need to do to make the thing work. And you have to kind of be able to put aside your personal preferences and dislikes for the end result. If it didn't work out in the long run and we had to go back to my setup, I would have been like, see, you know, but in the long run it worked out and people were happy. So it's good. For me, it's not, there were ideas and that I would like to have put on there. And there was some hesitation, certainly in my playing, I feel I can hear, that came from just not having the confidence of, you know, that setup. So yeah.
Was that the biggest album that you had played on up until that point? And was that the first time you heard your songs on the radio, songs that you had played on?
Not the first time I heard songs I'd played on. I've had some, again, the Ivana thing was, with the drum and bass thing, was a really big song. That was the first song I'd heard on the radio. And I remember there was a point where it was on so often that I remember, and the video I was in that was almost on all the time. So I do remember hearing the songs and being like, oh yeah, that again. And being like, holy crap, I'm over it. I'm over hearing myself on the radio. It's fucking awesome. Like that, you know, that was a milestone for me. Like, oh yeah, this again. But certainly at the time, it was definitely the biggest thing I'd done. We had the song was #1 for a few weeks, and then iTunes, it was #1 for a month or so, and
it even broke through to the US. Wasn't it a top 20 single in the US?
Yeah, that's right. We got to do like the Tonight Show, which I've never done anything like that in my life. And then here we are on the Tonight Show playing with Jay Leno, like playing for Jay Leno, and my nerves are just going through the roof. No, I didn't have a click, so I just remember telling myself, "You're gonna feel like you're playing this too slow, but play it slower than you want to play, because your adrenaline's gonna be jacking through your veins." And I'm so glad I did. I listened back to that performance now, and it's still it's like 5 clicks too fast. But at the time, I remember being like, it felt like this when it's like this, because I was so nervous. So that was definitely the biggest thing. Yeah, it was definitely the first time I thought, I felt for a fact a thing I was in was going to go. You know, we were doing we did like 6 months of touring, opening for Nickelback. We were on their label. So, you know, I'm not a big Nickelback guy, certainly, but they were very, very kind to us, and they took us to the States and all across Canada playing. So it was definitely a watershed moment in terms of the stuff I had done. Was the biggest thing at the time, for sure.
Yeah, and you know, Nickelback was one of the biggest bands in the world, and that label 604 Records was hot at that time. I mean, they were associated with Default. They had Theory of a Dead Man. They had Mariana's Trench. On and on. It seemed like everything that they put out was a hit. So I think it was probably a good home for Thornley at that point. And then there's with Big Wreck, there's some Chad Kroeger connections there as well later on, right? There's a newer single that's charted that features Chad Kroeger. We'll jump into that in a second. Yeah. So I want to dive into your time with Ben Kenny of Incubus. Incubus is one of my favorite bands. Before that, I have some kind words for you. It's been a while since I read some kind words. So
starting to wilt over here.
Yeah. So this is from Julian Taylor of Staggered Crossing, who's an amazing singer-songwriter. I was a fan of Further Again back in the day with Staggered Crossing. And he's, after a 20-year career, he got his first 2 Juno nominations last year, to show you like going the distance and, you know, keeping the vision, and then everyone else comes around in the end. So Julian says, he's an absolute beast of a drummer and a beautiful soul. I love him as a musician and as a man, and I've always wanted to share the stage with him. So maybe someday you'll share the stage.
Hopefully, yeah. I hope so. I was telling you this earlier, but when I moved to Toronto, you know, being a Black person that plays rock music, or certainly heavier music, is you don't see a lot of other brothers, you know, doing it and doing it without any kind of like, you know, sometimes you would see some guys playing in the rock world as a singer or as a rapper or as a drummer, but they would tend to bring over those flourishes from that R&B style, the more, let's say, Black music style, into that rock field. And Julian, I always kind of gravitated more to guys who didn't do that. Guys who were just like, no, this is what the music calls for, so this is what I'm playing. And Julian was the first person I ever saw. I was like, this guy's just Staggered Crossing. Like he's road tested, you know, and the songs he's writing come from a very dedicated place, and like he's not, I don't know how to say this without saying it this way, so I'll just say it, but he's not cashing in being Black to play music he plays. It has nothing to do with the music he creates, and I've always thought of him as a real goat for that, you know, as a real legend for that. And yeah, just such a performer. What a singer, what a player, like just a real great dude. I can't say enough good things about him. Yeah,
he's got a new album coming out, I believe, in October. So I'll keep an eye out for that one. Lots of great music on the way. So we have a fan question sent in here about Ben Kenny. He said, this is from Aaron Collins. He says, all Canadian bands that you've played with, and then Incubus's bass player. How did that happen?
It is kind of a weird blip on there.
Mr. Worldwide with Incubus here.
So that's a funny story. I haven't told many people this, but it's a very, you know, Joel, I'll tell you, man, like my life, a lot of things in my career have come across my plate because I've been ready for them, but a lot of things have just been luck. Like, just honestly, I've had a very lucky career, and that's not to say that like that's all it took, because you can be as lucky as you want, but if you can't capitalize on an opportunity when luck puts in front of your face, it doesn't mean anything. So, but with Ben, so check this out. So I was meeting a girl to go see a movie downtown at the, remember, well, it's still there, the Scotiabank movie theater on Queen or John and Richmond. I find much music. So I was meeting a girl there, and it was super cold. She was late. And so I went into the HMV. There was an HMV on Queen, just near there. There's an HMV music store near there, just to stay warm. And as it happened, the girl I was meeting was, I don't want to say she was a big Incubus fan. I want to say she was the Incubus fan. She was like it was all she would talk about. It was all she played in her car. It was annoying how much she loved Incubus.
Did she go all the way back to like Fungus Among Us and Science and way before Morning View and
yes,
what is it?
All the funk rap kind of stuff they used to deal with. All of it. And she was in love with Brandon. Knows everything. So I go into HMV to stay warm. I'm in there looking at CDs, and I look up, and there's Ben, Brandon, and Kilmore, the DJ, and they're just in HMV.
And like they're not signing autographs or anything?
No, like they're buying albums, right?
You mean they're human like the rest of us?
Yeah, they use money as currency. Anyways, so I just was like, this is wild. So I went up to them. I said, hey, family music, crazy guy. What are you guys doing here? And they're like, oh, they just done, or they were just rehearsed for an Intimate Interactive. I think they were doing one the following day. So they were in town early. And they were rehearsing for it. And I'm like, this is wild. I'm meeting someone who's like a super fan of yours. And it's so crazy that you're here and blah, blah. And so I talked to them for a bit. They were super polite, and we talked for a bit. And eventually Ben and I started talking more. Kill and Brandon just kind of went off to their thing. And Ben and I started talking more, and he was like, so do you play? I'm like, yeah, I play drums. Like, oh, do you play for anyone? And I was like, actually, and I pulled out the Thornley CD. I was like, that's me. He's like, oh, he's like, is this Ian Thornley? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you play drums with Ian Thornley? And I was like, you know who Ian Thornley is? Like, what the hell? He's like, dude, that's one of my guitar heroes. He's like, I've looked up to him since that first album. He's like, I think he's incredible. Like, holy, he was a little geeked out. He's like, well, obviously I'm buying this, you know? So he was like, let me get your number. I was like, oh, okay. So he took my number, and I didn't expect anything of it. And I left, and then ended up going to meet the girl. And I was like, okay, Ashley, we're going to miss this movie, but here's what's going to happen. We're going to walk back to HMV. And I said, I need you, before I tell you the rest of this, I need you to stay calm and not blow my cool here with these people. But Incubus is in there. She's like, I'm like, Ashley? She's like, okay. I'm like, we're going to go back. I'm going to introduce you to them. And we're going to take 2 minutes at a time. And then we're going to fuck off because I don't want to bother these people. And so she like vibrated back to the HMV, and we met them. But it was wild. It was just crazy to meet them like that. And so anyway, a year passed. I didn't hear from him again. I didn't expect to. A year passed. And then he said, and then he reached out to me on MySpace. It was MySpace at the time, right?
Good old MySpace.
Good old MySpace. I wish we had MySpace over Facebook, man. He reached out and said, hey, Sekou, I don't know if you remember me. My name is Ben Kenny. Yeah, I remember you, dude. I had your number in my phone, but I got into I dipped my motorbike and I ruined my phone with your number in it. And I've been looking for you, and I finally found you on here. Would you be interested in playing a show with me? I have my own project, my own label, and my own albums out. It's me on guitar, another guy on bass, and I would love for you to play drums on it. And I was like, okay, when's the show? He's like, I don't know. He's like, well, we have to do a show together. He's like, I heard you on the album. He goes, I really want you to play drums for me for this thing. And at the time I had just left Thornley, and all my musical commitments were kind of not important. And I'd been getting calls from musical director, a friend of mine who was in Thailand, who was overseas playing like in clubs every night, like 5-6 nights a week or something. And he said, hey, just come down here. It's like, you can make so much money. The weather's beautiful. The girls are beautiful. You don't have to spend the money. We put you up in like a 5-star hotel, your meal taken care of. So I was going to go down there for a year and just play jazz and R&B in like a bar in Thailand for in a hotel for a year. So I committed to that. And so I told Ben that. I was like, dude, I'd love to, but I'm leaving in August to do this thing. He's like, well, then we got to do a show before you leave. So he booked the show at the Knitting Factory in LA. He and Ashley, his bass player, flew down to Toronto, and I found us a place to rehearse. We rehearsed for a couple of days, going through songs, and I think I did okay. It was all right. It wasn't. I don't think I was, blowing the roof off or anything. And then we went down to LA, did another rehearsal, and even that rehearsal was kind of timid, let's just say. And so before I hit the stage with them for the show, I just said to myself, like, dude, this is it. This is the biggest artist you've ever played with. Make an impression. Like, don't fuck this up. Like, you got this. You know these songs. Just do it. And I went on stage and I don't know what it was at the time. I just turned something on. And Ben, I just remember, all I remember from the show is that like 3 moments where Ben were like trying to look at me kind of like, yeah, like, where did you come from? And from there, he was like, this is it. He's like, this is the group. This is it. He's like, you go to Thailand, you do your thing. When you get back, we're going to start recording. We're going to start playing shows. And so almost a month, the day after I got back, he was like, yeah, we're touring. So we've done I don't play with him anymore, but we've done a few tours and tracked a few things together. Ben in his own right is a phenomenal drummer. Like, he's one of these guys who he's not going to sit behind a kid, like, make stuff up. He has to work stuff out. But so much of his music that I had to learn to play for the tours took me to a different level, because I had to learn sticking that I just was not at all familiar with. But he wanted to be just that way. And it was really, really rewarding. So the 3 of us became really, really close. And we did a bunch of touring and stuff. There were always smaller shows, because over the years, Incubus is kind of, their notoriety's kind of gone down. So the shows got smaller and smaller, but it was a lot of fun just to play with this guy that people knew from this thing. And I was very proud of the work we did together,
And that was the start of a 12-year relationship of
yeah, that's right.
Playing live with him. And what most people don't know is he was the guitarist for the Roots, and then he was the bass player for Incubus. And then on his solo stuff, he plays everything, including drums. Like, how talented is that dude?
Produces it, he's a phenomenal photographer, so he does all the artwork for it. Like, his knowledge of drums so far supersedes mine. It's not even funny. Like, yeah, he's something else, man. Really
how can one person get all the talent on all the instruments? I mean, what about the rest of us that just want to be good on one instrument,
Seriously, like, he came up in Philly. So from what he explained to me is, and it's not just, but there's a bunch of places like this in the States where you just grew up and you learned to play everything. You learned to play keys, you learned to play bass, you learned to play guitar and drums, and people would interchange based on what the need was for the gig at the time. So you would get calls for R&B gigs, or neo soul gigs at the time it was for him. And you would be playing drums one week and then hop off into a tour where you're playing bass for someone else. And again, these are, these cats, like, these are all guys who came up in the same time as the Roots and stuff and all that neo soul stuff. So you can't be mediocre. You have to be exceptional at it. So he took those skill sets and transferred them into the style music he was into, which he came up playing more punk and hardcore stuff, but just decided to be really good on guitar and really good on bass and singing. And he's one of those guys. It's really frustrating. Yeah.
It's super frustrating.
Yeah.
So we have about 20 minutes left. I just want to quickly touch on Bedouin Soundclash and Serena Ryder, and then we'll finish off with as much as we can get in with the big rec stuff. Before those two, we have another fan question. I just want to make sure to get the fan questions in because it means a lot to them that their voice can be heard, you know? So this is a strange question, so do your best and it can be a short answer. So from David Steer, this is the other fan group on Facebook. So they're called Fans of Big Rec and Thornley. And there's 1,100 fans in there. And David Steer asks, what's his $1 million idea that no one takes seriously?
Wow.
Just do your best with that one.
I'll tell you $1 million idea that only just recently got taken seriously. I can do that one. I've added a gong, a 40-inch gong to my setup. I don't play it. I don't touch it once. I've had this idea for years. I've tried to ask other people in rock bands, and I've always been told no. This is the first time that Ian and company thought, that's actually fucking hysterical. To have a big gong on stage behind me, this really imposing, impossible to miss gong that you never play once. We even sound check our gong. So when we're about to go on stage as a headliner, my tech goes up, he texts kick, and then he, good, okay, cool. It never gets touched throughout the show. I just have always loved the idea of people looking on stage being like, oh, I can't wait to hit that fucking thing. And then the encore comes, and then we leave and we never play it. And thankfully, I'm in a band now where Ian and our manager think it's a really stupid, funny thing. So we have this massive thing that we get our crew to load in and out and set up that we never touch. That's my $1 million idea.
That's amazing. That's I'm sure a lot of the hardcore fans were wondering what's going on with that, and now they know.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And hey, fans can't leave after 2 or 3 songs because they got to wait for that gong hit, right?
Exactly.
So that's too good. So you played live with Bedouin Soundclash from 2010 to 2012. You also played drums on their album Light the Horizon. So that album had 3 hit singles: Mountaintop, Elongo, Brutal Hearts. All 3 of those have very different drumming on it. Like one is like tom heavy. Some of them are like the rims you're playing. And then over to Serena Ryder, you played for a decade, 2012 to 2022. And you started playing with her as Stompa became this like massive single.
Right before, yeah.
Is there anything that you want to touch on between Bedouin and Serena Ryder? I have all these questions, but all the Big Rec fans are like, how has he not talked about Big Rec yet? An hour and 45 minutes in.
Yeah, I don't know. The Bedouin stuff was interesting. I just got called out of the blue for it. I guess they were looking for a new drummer, and it was one of those moments in my life where I was, I talked about it earlier, just looking up, working, looking up, and realizing you'd made a certain impression. They told me that when they went to ask 3 different major labels at the time who would be a good fit, my name came up first each time, which I thought was a really good. It made me feel great that the work I've been putting in for the years kind of, was being recognized. So that was great. At the time, it was definitely the biggest thing I'd ever done because those guys are known all over the world. We've done tours, all over the planet, and they, whether it's big or small, they made an impression on people. So it was really fun doing that, and having to be I was the ringer in that band. I was the guy who had to come out every night and in that 3-piece be the like flashy guy and kind of elevate stuff. So it was really fun. It brought me back a little bit to my punk roots, which I hadn't done for some time. So yeah, I really like it. Eventually, we just kind of didn't really, we weren't really getting along so well, and it just made the most sense for me to just kind of step away. So I did that. Serena, I just got recommended for that gig, and I didn't know her beforehand. She had a kind of a decent level of success before Stompa. Certainly not a household name, but I joined when that record was being launched, and yeah, it was wild just to see this meteoric rise, you know, like within I don't know, a couple months, we're seeing massive billboards on sides of highways, and the videos were all over the place, and the shows were just arenas and stuff. So she is a really gifted singer. Like, very few people, I would walk on stage and like what I would hear in my in-ears of her singing is the exact same thing I heard on the record every time, which was really incredible to see. But she and I really got along super well. We're very close. I don't play with her anymore. I had to step away to the Big Rec stuff, but that was, I wasn't on the records for that. Those were mostly drum loops, and her producer at the time played drums as well. So he did the drums in the album. But yeah, it was just so much fun to play with her. It was just a way poppier, and, you know, just the reason I was there for 10 years is because of how close we were. She calls me her big brother, and she's my little sister, and we feel that way about each other. And it was tough to step away, but Big Rec requires someone who's Big Rec's drummer. You know, it requires somebody who doesn't say no to stuff. And with my schedule, with Serena and a few other artists, it was untenable. So I had to, you know, I made a choice, and this is where Big Rec is, and Serena notwithstanding, you know, but like I will tell people this very, very honestly, maybe a little brutally, but like I didn't like most of the music that I played for a living. And that was fine. It's not my job to like it. It's my job to play it well and make money doing it. So it was just something I would do for a long time. I just didn't expect to enjoy what I played. And it is wild to be in a band now with people who I love. I love each of those guys. I love our crew. I love the music we made together. I love the songs that existed before I came in. I was a Big Rec fan before I met Ian. You know, I met Ian by chance. And you know, so I was a massive fan before he knew I existed. So getting to play those songs and the songs we've written and getting to get challenged every night is I really couldn't be happier. It's the most fulfilling thing I've done in as far back as I can remember, you know.
So last year, 2021, you joined Big Rec. Mm-hmm. You guys have recorded a new album called Big Rec 7, 15 songs. You've decided to release it in 5-song chunks. So you have 3 EPs, 2 of them are out, 7.1, 7.2, and then 7.3 is on the way. Just the way the industry is now, the way people consume music, it's smart to release it in smaller chunks and have more singles available. It looks like the band is always there instead of one big thing comes out and then after 3 months, there's nothing for the next year and a half waiting for a new album. So I think it's a smart business move. We have a fan question from Brandy Charlton, who says, what was the call like when Ian asked you to play with him again, this time with Big Rec? If you got a call, I don't know if an audition came up. I don't know how all that happened.
No, it was a call. It was completely out of the blue. Like, so since I left Thornley, you know, Ian and we've stayed in touch. Certainly, we didn't talk every week. We talked a couple times a month as friends, and I think our relationship actually got better after I left that band. You know, we were both in a certain spot where we were pretty toxic to each other back in Thornley. So it got better over the years, just being friends. And January 21, he called me out of the blue and said, "Hey man, we are having some problems." Chuck, the other drummer, was having some health issues, and it bled through to that. When they were in the studio tracking, he was having a really difficult time laying some stuff down, and he said, "Would you be interested in coming in and taking a stab at these 15 songs tomorrow?" You know, Chuck's had the song.
No time like the present, I suppose.
Chuck's had the song for 3 months. The whole band's had the song for 3 months to kind of figure out their parts and things like that. And here I have to come in like the following day and kind of figure it out. So I went in and he had told me, he said, "Listen, there might be a spot opening in the band, but like I don't want to say that for sure. Just hold, and if something happens, I'll let you know." And then I think after we tracked, I think I tracked, was it 5 or 4 songs the first day? I can't remember. The first day we tracked a bunch of stuff, and then it was like, yeah, it's if you're happy to be here, we absolutely want you here, like for sure. You know, Ian and I have always been massive fans of each other's playing, and so yeah, it just kind of happened that way pretty organically. Like I tracked the rest of the songs. We were like, again, my performance anxiety was, I don't think he even knows this, but it was at an all-time high when I was doing that. And I did not want to make mistakes. It was a chance to play for a band that I've always had nothing but respect for. I didn't want to let Ian down. The songs were incredible, and I wanted to do right by them. And so I really had to kind of look within myself, and then on top of that, Ian's so excited to have me. The whole time I'm tracking, he's like looking from the control room, like looking at me, you know, just making stuff up, making fills up as I'm trying to figure out what the section is for song and stuff. And thankfully, it went really well. And he was just like, "This is," he's like, "You've elevated these songs." He's like, "I did not expect that level of just musicality come to those songs." And so getting that feedback from him was like, yeah, okay. And it kind of gave me wind in my sails to kind of really do as best job as I could for the songs. And by the time we were done, like, you know, just hearing him, like he would text me like, "Dude, you next leveled it. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, thank you so much." So hearing that from a band that I've been in love with them since the first album, like everyone else. So knowing that it felt that way just made me feel, for the first time in a long time, like I really brought something to the table, and I was home. You know, I was really home. So that's how it happened. It was just a circumstance that I just happened to be ready for, and it worked out.
So I listened to the 2 EPs, the 10 new songs, several times to really take them in. Man, there's some heavy riffs in there. There's like some amazing playing. There's jams. There's crazy guitar solos. There's some blues influence throughout the hard rock stuff. Does Big Wreck feel like a great band, a great match for you to be a part of, to really show your skills? Because there's like different time signatures. There's a lot going on that allows you to show off your chops.
Yeah, 100%. Like I really, like Joel, I really do feel like I'm home. You know what I mean? Like I've been bouncing around, and it's by design. I've been bouncing around trying to be a jack of all trades, you know, master of none to as many things as I can, because it's having more streams of income has been how I've made my career in the last couple of decades. So it feels really good to be settled, to be in something where I get it. Like I get what he's going for in the old stuff and the new stuff. I get what he's going for on stage, and he in turn trusts me to play the right things for the songs, as well as bring new things. So what that means is when we're on stage, there are times where I'm playing stuff that, or I'm dropping out in certain sections, or I'm bringing in a part from a different song that we all know, to, like, you know, like we were doing "Come Again" the other day, and I've, you know, played that song I don't know how many hundreds of times over the past, you know, in and out of the past decade and change. But I heard a spot in it somewhere where I could play the drum beat from "Sunday Bloody Sunday," and I put it in there, and he was just like, but he was all smiles, you know, because there's the trust that whatever decision I make, while it might be jarring at the second, is right for the music. It's not gonna be a record scratch moment. It's gonna add to it. So having that kind of trust was something that's so, I call Big Wreck important. Like, again, and this has nothing to do with me, whether I leave the band tomorrow or was never in it in the first place. I do feel, I have felt for decades, that this band's one of the more important bands in Canada. Certainly one of the best live acts in Canada, bar none. And so being told by the guy who stewards the whole thing that, you know, he's happy I'm here, and that he feels confident with me on stage, you know, backing up, it means the world. You know, it means I'm doing something right. And that then in turn helps the anxiety that I often feel on stage, and it helps me feel confident about bringing stuff to the table, to the music. So
Can we take a moment to acknowledge just how talented Ian Thornley is as a singer, as a songwriter, as a guitarist, as a frontman? This guy is Canadian royalty. Can we just acknowledge him for a second?
You know, and I'll tell you something. It's so funny because he's told me this a bunch over the years. Like he only learned to sing and sang in Big Rec because when they started the band, they were auditioning singers. He was just going to play lead guitar and write songs, but they just couldn't find anyone who was good enough. So he was like, fine, I guess I'll do it. But he didn't want to do it. You know, he's still to this day considers himself a guitar player. He doesn't really consider himself a singer, even though he's got this incredible voice, you know. And I tell people this all the time, he's retroactively ruined my favorite guitar players growing up. Because playing with somebody who has that skill set, you listen to, you playing with it, you learn what that level of playing takes and where he comes from. So then when you go back and you listen to like, dude, I used to fucking love Primus. I can't listen to Larry Lalonde anymore. I can't listen to his playing anymore. I can't, because it's just, it's Ian is such a level that it educates your ears. So when you go back and listen to stuff that you just like because you liked that at the time, you can now be a lot more critical of it and be like, oh, those are wrong notes. Okay. You know, like he really is. And like I said, like I you know, when I met Ben that time, Ben was like, dude, he's in my top 3. Like he's the dude, you know. He's his ability to songwrite, his ability to sing, the way he pushes himself on stage every night, like, yeah, I feel very fortunate to be in a band with him again, for sure.
So just a few days ago, you posted a drum cam video of a live performance of Fear and Cowardice, and it's awesome. Like it's an amazing jam. It's a great video. So a couple of questions are, number one, when did you start using a drum cam, or where did you get the idea to start using that? Because it's awesome. And number two, the mix sounds great. Normally with a drum cam, it's like you're basically just hearing the drums and a little of the bleed from the monitors. Are you getting a direct signal from the board or something for your drum cam?
So first question, I started using it in the Bedouin days. I think I just saw a bunch of guys just posting YouTube videos with the GoPros and stuff. And I started using it as a tool. It wasn't for posting anything ever. It was just meant to watch what I was doing and be like, you dummy, why did you play that? You know, and clean stuff up. And then over the years, I've been braver when I feel confident about, which is tough because, you know, you can go on YouTube and see phenomenal drummers. So it took me a long time to feel confident posting anything that was worthy of being online. But that was definitely the Bedouin days. And then now that I'm in Big Rec and it's kind of, we have a lot of fans who care about all this stuff. They really, it means a lot to them. And I felt more and more confident about the fact that like, wow, we're really good live. And the stuff that I get to play is stuff that I think people would really get a kick out of. I've just been posting more and more. So that's where that came from. As far as a mix, that is a mix from our monitors. That's a monitor mix from our monitor tech who just cleaned it up a bit. And yeah, so I just basically take that audio and I marry it with the video. I just sync it up and there you go. Because the GoPro audio was trashed. It's all harsh cymbals and you don't hear the kick drum sometimes, and it's annoying. And the vocals and the guitars get washed out. So I do a mix. I ask for a mix rather that's got a little bit of everything, but it's still very drum heavy because it's a drum cam, but still has all the elements so you can see how everything works together. But yeah, that video was the first time we played that song. So it's still a little rough in spots for me, but it's honest, you know. So I put it up because I thought people get a kick out of it.
Yeah, drum cams usually don't sound great, and that one sounded really good. So we have a fan question from Evan Simmons. He asks, any 7.3 hints? So he's asking about the 30p. Any hints about when it's coming out or what to expect?
I can't give you any hints about when it's coming out. We're still looking at 7.2 right now, and you know, and focusing on that release. But in terms of what you can expect, so the goal of releasing these in the way we did was, yeah, we feel confident about all the songs. We think all the songs are incredible. And when you release a full album, you know, certain songs will get spikes, you know, what people will kind of attach to, and other songs that are great songs might not get their due because of that. So the idea of the EP is like you are now able to focus on all the songs and appreciate them as whole. So when the full album comes out, you know it back to front. The goal was to have a bit of 3 different types of music. One was like more of like maybe a bluesy Zeppelin type of thing, which there are songs on 7.1, 7.2 that have those feels, like Rye Bread and Spit It Out, you know, have decidedly bluesy Zeppelin type of thing. Then to have something more, for lack of a less general term, something more proggy, right? Something with time signatures and more solos and things like that. And then so that, and then stuff that we call it just doom, stuff that's just like Bombs Away, right? Like just riff rock, you know? So each EP, we want to have a bit of each of those elements. So that being said, 7.3 will have more of that. We'll have more of each of those kind of styles, but just different songs. That's about all I can tell you right now.
Now, I have a quote here from someone that knows all about live audio. This is from Dan Preston, who's a front of house engineer who's worked with Finger 11, I Mother Earth, 3 Days Grace, and Big Wreck. So yes, this is what Dan has to say. He just got home yesterday from a tour with JJ Wild and the Glorious Sons, and they played with Kiss in like the Coliseum. I don't know. They played some crazy places. So yeah. So this is from Dan Preston. This is a longer quote as well. People like writing really long quotes for you. I don't know. You inspire them to write novels. So Dan Preston says, being a rock guitarist in the 90s, it's obvious that I was a fan of Big Wreck and Mr. Thornley in particular. Naturally, as Ian went solo, I followed. My first encounter with the Thornley band was at Canadian Music Week 2003 when they were playing with 3 Days Grace at the Opera House. As much as I was looking forward to watching Ian rip it up, I was blown away by Sekou. The precision, power, and style that was displayed made me realize that this guy was a force. When I heard that he was returning to the lineup last year, I was super stoked knowing that I would be the guy at the front of house getting to mix this powerhouse band with Sekou now in the mix. He's a wonderful hang, and I very much look forward to the next time I'm behind the board for Sekou and Big Wreck once again to drop a few elbows. That's from Dan Preston.
That's right. Dan's the man. I love his mixing. He mixes us very drum heavy. So I'm a big fan of the way Dan mixes, and a great hang. He's one of those, he does front of house, but he also does some tour managing. And I've always found a really good facet of a tour manager is somebody who does not let the artist feel like they're dealing with 1,001 stresses, which most tour managers do on a given day. Things are always going wrong, and they're always trying to put out fires. And you know, here I come going, hey Dan, catering. Do they have any? You know, I'm asking these inane questions about, and he's talking to me like, yeah. So you'll find catering does. We'll have fish, and then we'll have some vegan options. But while in the meantime, he's trying to figure out why there's no backdrop on stage or why there's no riser or whatever it is. You know. He's got a really good temperament for babysitting, you know, grown children rather, while still doing a really incredible job at front of house and as a TM. So love that guy. Yeah, I hope we get to work with him again soon for sure.
So I have one final quote and then a couple deep questions, and we will wrap up. So this is from bass player and vocalist Curtis Freeman, who I know from the Metalworks days. So he says, Sekou belongs on big stages in front of big audiences. There are a lot of fine musicians out there, but Sekou is more than that. He's an entertainer. As a fan, I've watched him play on several occasions and have even had the honor to play with him a few times too. Deep pockets, respect for the songs, attention to detail, chops. This guy is the full package. On top of that, he looks cool, and his social media game is next level. Man, people love your social media. There was no doubt that Sekou was destined to play great gigs. This is just the beginning. That's from Curtis Freeman.
Wow. Yeah, he's a sweetheart. A very funny guy too, as you know. But yeah, that's great. Yeah, people keep mentioning the social media thing. I have a very, I think, odd sense of humor, but I've somehow managed to get a lot of people who seem to get a kick out of my Instagram page. To the point where I almost feel bad posting stuff that's not funny, because people just always, I like, Joel, I'm not kidding. I've heard this a few hundred times in person. Like, your Instagram is the first thing I go to when I wake up. And you made me laugh. Me and my people, me and my friends at work, we're bored. We go through everything. We just laugh for hours and hours. And every so often I'll get a like on a post from like 3 years ago. I'm like, you were sitting at your phone for that long to get to that back. So I actually do feel bad sometimes when I post something personal, because it's not funny. It's just, just my life. But yeah, it's very funny when we did a gig in London, and this girl started walking up to me, and she was like, looking at me and smiling. I was like, oh God, here I go. Sorry, sweetie, Yeah. And she was like, I just want to tell you that your Instagram. And I'm like, cool. Can I get any props for being a drummer, or is it just gonna be like about the content I find on the internet and I make a funny caption for it? So I still have to find a way to really monetize my.
Yeah, you're on your way to being a social media influencer. Some of these people, they post a picture and they get like 50 grand. So
I gotta figure that out. Yeah.
That's all good. So I actually, right now, as I read his quote, I remember the first time I met Curtis here. I was hosting an open mic at Cooper's Pub down the street from Metalworks, and people are signing up, and I see him, and I think he had an instrument with him, and he wasn't on the list. And I said, hey, are you looking to play? He goes, oh, I don't know, like maybe I'll play. And eventually I think there was still an opening, and I go, hey man, like I can get you up right now if you want to go. Okay. He gets up and he killed it. I think he played some Beatles songs, and it was like incredible. Like his playing, his vocals, everything was, he was like a total pro. And open mics, there's various levels of talent.
Yeah.
And then there's this like world-class musician that just like fumbled his way onto the stage. And that's how I met him. And then he started working at Metalworks afterwards. So
wow, that's hilarious. Yeah, he's awesome, dude. I haven't played with him in a long time, but he's definitely one of those guys that like he just, there's I have to tell you that there's a connection that you have to have with your bass player, and he, when I would step on stage with them, there's a few guys I would play with, as great as they were, you have to kind of feel around the dark where they're sitting, where you're singing, how it works together. And he was one of those guys where it was instant. It was just by the chorus. I was like, oh, I got you. And he was like, oh, I got you. And when you have that, like, we take it for granted, but that is such a, especially in the session world, it is such a luxury to have somebody where you don't have to have that. You have that instant telepathy. You don't have to work on it, or like, it's just there. You can now focus on playing what you need to play, like, yeah, he's special for sure.
So final 3 questions. The first 2, you can rapid fire through them quickly. Okay. All right. Do you still have some musical dreams in your heart that you've still not achieved, that you're working towards?
I mean, sure. Yeah. Boy, I'd like to headline Red Rocks. That would be incredible. I've played there once as an opener with Serena. We opened for One Republic there, and I'd heard about it and seen, I saw the YouTube video or the YouTube video and all the other performances stuff. But being there was like was religious, and the idea of headlining Red Rocks, like looking at from a drum riser on Red Rocks, would be something else. And doing it with Big Rep would be, I mean, that it's definitely, when they say bucket list, that's like, yeah, that's the top. Certainly.
Before you add any others, I remember owning a Incubus live at Red Rocks DVD. And then yesterday I watched, there's a brand new Bill Burr special that's him live at Red Rocks. Anyways, dropping that in now. And then if you have more musical dreams.
I know we're running out of time, but I'll tell you a funny anecdote about Ben and that Incubus recording. and I don't know if he wants me to tell us now, probably not, but I'll tell him this. But like, he was so stoked about doing that performance. Obviously, anyone is. And I think they had done a bunch of touring leading up to just to get ready for it. On the tour, Brandon was singing certain songs a little pitchy. He was either sharp or flat on certain spots. So as Ben is one of the backup vocalists, to kind of support him, he would change his pitch, even though he knew what the right notes were. He changed his pitch just to support Brandon, so it sounded fuller on that run. Brandon didn't tell him this, but when they recorded the video for Red Rocks, he went in a couple weeks later after he heard his vocals were pitchy and re-recorded his vocals so that he was on point and left Ben's. So Ben is on that recording. He's like, I can't listen to that thing. He's like, it drives me crazy because here I am trying to do this, and this motherfucker went and redid his vocals.
He's trying to do a solid for him, and then
exactly.
Brandon left him hanging.
Exactly. And not just on a gig, like on a DVD that everyone, like hundreds of thousands of people.
It's just forever. It's just forever.
Yeah, exactly.
That's too funny. Any other musical dreams or next question? There's a Grammy out there with your name on it. There's lots of stuff.
Sure. Yeah. No. Sure. I mean, a Grammy be neat. I think a small dream is. I'm really, really proud of this. These EPs and this subsequent album that we did. I really do feel, and I don't brag a lot, but I really do feel that we are one of the better bands in this country. And it would be a real shame to me if more people didn't get a chance to hear the stuff. You know, the EP is doing decent. You know, this last one, I think is number one. Was number one for a few weeks on the rock charts, and number two behind Drake's on Canada iTunes, or Canada's Apple Music, and it would have been number one if Drake didn't put an album out. So I feel confident that it's getting its due in certain places, but a real dream for me would be, like, you know, a Grammy would be nice, but I would love a Juno. Not even. I know it sounds crazy, but just so that people in this country understand, like, this guy is still at it. This guy, Ian Thornley, he's still at it, and the band is better than it's ever been. Like, I feel complimented in hearing from multiple people that this is the best lineup that's ever been, because as somebody who was a fan, I thought that lineup, you know, at the time was it. So it would mean a lot for sure if people over time just, you know, and I'm not even talking about record sales. I'm just talking about acknowledging that, you know, this is one of the better bands and has been for decades, one of the better bands this country's ever produced, you know?
When you look back on your life and career, what are you most proud of and what are you most grateful for? Being in this band is, and these EPs is certainly one of them. It might be top one, but playing in 24/7 Spies was also pretty seminal. Just, and it's not a lot of band that it's not a band rather that a lot of people know about. But for me, growing up, I'll be really quick about it. They were a band. Are you familiar with them at all? Only because I was talking to Darren about them when I was getting the quote. Yeah, for
sure. So coming up, again, as a Black rock kid, coming up, it was three rock bands. It was Fishbone, it was Living Color, and it was 24/7 Spies. And those were my chance to see Black people playing hardcore or metal or heavy rock music or whatever, and doing it well. And Spies was more of the hardcore and metal variety than anything else. And they were always important to me. I won't go over the timeline of it, but they broke up, they got back together just through Facebook. I happened to reach out to the guitar player, the core guy of the band, and said, "Hey, I'm a fan. I'm so glad to see you guys back together. Thank you so much for what you've done. You've made people like me, you know, by being, you know, who you are." And we just got talking. They eventually had a falling out with the drummer. He asked me to come to New York to audition for the band. And I didn't think I was going to get it. Like, it's like, That's letter A, and I'm letter Z. Like I'm the byproduct of these people. Like I'm not going to be in the band. But I'm going to go meet the bass player and the guitar player who are the band, and they're my idols. So I'm just going to meet them, and that's plenty. So I flew down to New York, and I locked myself in the rehearsal space before that for 2 days, and just 8 hours a day, just learning the stuff backwards. I couldn't play double bass drum pedal. There was some double bass drum pedal on the songs that I just would make up for with the floor tom and the kick, like just to, and then went down to the audition, and 4 songs in, they were like, yeah, it's your gig. Of course, you're killing it right now. You crushed it. And so to me, walking out of that rehearsal space and back to my Airbnb at the time was, to say I was on cloud 9 doesn't begin to describe it. And it did, we ended up doing I think 1 show in the year that I was in the band. And then eventually Fish was there, and Fish saw that I was playing and saw that he was like, and they had asked him to play years before, and he'd said no due to some other commitments. And so now he was like, if you want me to play, I guess I could do it. And so they like, hey, we love you, but Fish is our boy. We've known him. Spies and Living Color and Fishbone toured a bunch, so they've known each other for years. They're the same age roughly, so it just made more sense for them. They were old friends for them to have him back, which was fine. But just knowing that I was the drummer for this band that I grew up listening to, it's definitely one of the top moments of my life, even though I didn't really, go anywhere. The stuff in terms of work that I've done, the stuff with Big Wreck is, I could not be more proud of what we've done, and then on top of that, where we take it live when we play it, it's a whole other thing. So I really feel like I've come into a new life, a second life on the instrument, and a new love for playing, and I cannot wait for people to hear all these songs, and the feedback we've been getting has been phenomenal. So I feel pretty good. But again, as Ian puts it, like, listen, if this record does well, it doesn't do well, we're going to go down swinging. So I love that. I love that approach, So yeah.
So final question, if you could go back in time and you could sit down next to your 10-year-old self, so you have cute little Sekou sitting there, and you have a lifetime of experience, of mentorship, of lessons, highs and lows.
Right.
What advice do you give little Sekou to help him through his life?
Get a teacher. Get a drum teacher. Get a drum teacher and learn to sing or play piano. These are 2 things I do not do. I do not sing or play piano. But I do feel, again, I'm turning 50 next year, and I really do feel like I taught myself to play. I still can't read music, but I've taught myself to play. And while I'm happy with what I've gotten, I feel like there's a glass ceiling that ability gets you, if you are just trying to brute force your way through learning things. There's things that I've figured out over the years that would have taken me a month with a good teacher, or a lesson with a good teacher that I spent months or years trying to figure out. So I would have certainly told myself to get a teacher, to have the basis, the foundation of what I do be bigger and better, and learn a different instrument, so you have a better appreciation of songwriting and a better appreciation of what you bring to the table when you're playing drums. So certainly I would tell it to, and I have people asking me for advice, like, what do I do to be a session musician or to get to where you are? I tell them, I said, find a good teacher and listen to as much stuff as possible. But I already did that. So I would tell a 10-year-old me, get a teacher, stay away from Vlada Tabachek, because she's just going to break your heart, and pick up another instrument, For sure.
Great. That's great advice. So for our listeners, where can they go online to find more information about Big Wreck? And then if you could share your Instagram that we've talked about for the last 2 hours.
Mm-hmm. Big Wreck is bigwreck.com. It's our website. You'll see tour dates. You'll, find out what we're up to. And this is a pretty busy year, so there'll be a lot of information on there in terms of shows. We have some tours coming up that we can't really talk about yet. They're pretty cool. And we've got a bunch of, like, this year is nothing but shows and shows. And then we've got the third EP coming up, which at a date we can't speak about just yet. But you can find that all out on bigwreck.com. I'm not on Facebook, but I believe that there's a Facebook page or 3 there. to check out. And then the band's Instagram is Big Rec Music, at Big Rec Music. For me, I am at 40 Deuce on Instagram, FORTYDEUCE, where you'll find a lot of jokes and the occasional deep dive into my drum kit, and or over shoulder drum cams, or videos of my dog. On YouTube, what am I on YouTube? Let me look. What am I on YouTube? Let me just look here real quick. I think I'm just. Oh yeah, I'm just Sekou Lumumba. SEKOULUMUMB on YouTube. I've been posting more and more. I've got a couple videos, just play-alongs. I've got some older stuff on there as well. I'm going to do more videos of kind of behind the scenes of what it's like of a touring band, certainly us being on the road and opening for people or headlining, doing festivals. I've gotten some really good feedback from people because we take this stuff for granted, that people love seeing the minutia of our day of like, what do you do? So this catering, and then you practice, and then you sound check, and then you get a problem with sound check. And so I'm going to do more of those.
And then your bus catches on fire.
And your bus catches on fire, as it does sometimes. Your bus blows up, right? So yeah, that happened. I planned to make that video obviously well before that happened. The bus blowing up and the story behind him was a nice way to kind of put a bow on the entire video. This is the tour. So yeah, you can find me on YouTube and on Insta. I'm on Twitter, but I really just retweet other people. I don't really post much. But I'm Sekou Lumumba on there as well.
So as we wrap up, I just want to take a second to acknowledge you for your lifelong pursuit of mastery as a drummer. I want to acknowledge you for your transparency and your vulnerability on social media. So on your YouTube and your Instagram. So a lot of people can relate to that. It's very helpful to a lot of people, myself included. I want to acknowledge you for your drumming on some great albums from Bedouin, Soundclash, from Thornley, from Big Rec. These are albums that I've grown up listening to, and the music means a lot to me. And then last but not least, I want to take a moment to thank you as a fan of this music, as a fan of yours, for taking the last 2+ hours to answer my questions. These are questions that I've always wanted to know the answer to. And you pulled back the curtain for me here today. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, dude. I've done a handful of interviews, and I gotta say, this is certainly the most personal one I've done. You know, I've done a bunch of interviews talking about gear, talking about stuff I've done and stuff like that. But this is, I appreciate hearing feedback from, it's great that you're getting feedback from people in the community and people that I've known for years, because I would never hear this stuff from them ever. So it's great to know that you're appreciated in that way, not just from them, but from you and from the fans as well. So thank you so much. It was really great, and it blew by, man. I'm sure you hear that a lot. It just it flew by.
Absolutely. So yeah, to our listeners, to the Big Rec fans, to the Sekou fans, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sticking with us for the last 2+ hours. We appreciate it. And we'll see you on the next episode. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I'd love to hear from you guys. My goal is to grow this podcast organically, where you're giving me feedback on topics you'd like me to cover and guests you'd like me to interview. You can reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Joel Martin Mastery. Joel is Joel, and on Twitter at Joel Mastery. So I am done. I am complete. I approve this message, and I'll see you on the next episode.